welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Raj Gopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello, folks, and welcome to this episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm, of course, Sri, your co-founder and co-host of the CPG Guys, and also co-founder and partner of Think Blue. Your key to unlocking your profitability potential. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, we shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please do listen to my older daughter, Ria Raj's music, and my younger daughter, Lara Raj, is a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group. Cat's Eye, whose Netflix docuseries on the making of the band, is set to release in summer, while my wife, Kavita Raj, has her own podcast, Lights, Camera, Convo, on iHeartRadio and all streaming platforms. Not joining me today is Peter V.S. Bond, as he's away in Japan, and when he's not co-hosting this podcast, he serves as Partnership Acceleration Lead at Flywheel, a division of Omnicom that helps brands improve their SEO and SEM, growing their e-commerce businesses. Before we get to our guest, we want to ask you to help spread the word about this community we've created in the CPG Guys beyond sharing our podcast with your friends. If you're using Apple Podcasts or Spotify as your preferred listening platform, leave us a rating as it helps feed the algorithm that makes us more findable by CPG retail people like you looking for education as well as entertainment. What your rating does is also tells us how we're doing, and what your review does is tells us whether having the right conversation with the right guest. So please do that and help build this ecosystem of conversations that we continue to do past episode 400 today. We're happy that the CPG Guys is part of an impressive collection of highly rated podcasts, including CPG Scoop with Risa and Jennifer, and the FMCG Guys with Daniel, Efrain, and Christine across the Atlantic pond over in Europe. Links to our podcast, our sister cast, and the social media profiles of my daughters Ria and Laura, my wife's podcast, may be found in the digital liner notes of this episode. In the last 15-odd months, our industry has seen a huge shift in baseline volume for most branded manufacturers. That, coupled by a rapid rise of private label, has questioned inflationary pricing across the board. To the day, volume change is real. So today we're going to take a deep dive into the antithesis of that, which is we've seen retail media budgets getting challenged for the first time in the last 4 years. I would say 2020, 21, 22, and even half of 23, the dollars are flowing into retail media and digital advertising in general. But now it looks like the switch has been turned off. Most large brands are saying no to budgets. And to address this very topic of the retail media and media ecosystem and digital advertising, we have none other than a very special guest that I actually met while I was at ShopTalk Europe. And we chatted about how an effective dialogue on this topic is much necessary now. So let's get a conversation going. Join me in welcoming to the show none other than my friend here who I did meet in ShopTalk Barcelona, leading advertising Omnichannel as well as retail media for Kettle Fire, specifically the Bone and Broth band, Niccolo Gloazzo. Nico, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Sri. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Nico, before we start with our Q&A segment here, can you give us an overview of your current role as Senior Director of Omnichannel and Retail Media at Kettle Fire?
Yeah, sure. So right now, I basically oversee DTC, Amazon, and all the retail media ecosystem at Kettle Fire, which is a bone broth company based in Austin, Texas. And started in DTC, then moving to the Amazon. And of course, because the brand expanded so much in retail, my role, of course, changed over time. And now basically overseeing a lot from offline advertisement, out of home to online, the retail media stuff happening nowadays.
And for our audience, can you give them a quick overview of if they want to find your product, the Bone and Broth? Where would they look? So it's Amazon, it's D2C. Is there anywhere else in retail?
Yes, basically I'd say every single retail in the United States, from grocery to conventional, right now, Whole Food, you can find us at Walmart, Kroger, Target, some Costco, some regional Costco, H-E-B, Wegmans. So it depends where you are, but I would say in every single grocery shop right now, you can find Kettle Fire. So it's a pretty exciting moment for us.
Congratulations on all the success you have had, as well as Kettle Fire has had with Bone Broth. So thank you for that overview. In the digital liner notes of this episode, we'll of course include links to your LinkedIn profile, Kettle Fire companies, as well as LinkedIn pages for our listeners to access while we go on with that conversation. So here's the first question. No surprise, Niccolo, one we discussed in Barcelona. You've been in this tech-led omnichannel space for a decade plus. What are some learnings for you? And then what were some surprises that took you completely off the wall?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm shocked that it's already a decade. I didn't think about that before, this question. But actually, I was surprised, I would say, about how this ecosystem changed, especially on the CPG side for CPG brands. Like the way that smaller brand then started from DTC and then jump into the retail, and the way that actually you can manage now retail media was like totally a learning experience for me. When I started, was like all DTC, all Amazon growing. Facebook was still a thing. It was easy to reach customers, and then with the introduction of Instacart and those bigger players, was very, I would say, very fun. It was a fun environment to be playing around with, and the team also changed. That's something that I noticed in the past years. It's like the structure of the team and the skill set needed changed over time. So that was very surprising to me. This happened, I would say, in 2 years, 2, 3 years after COVID. All of this totally changed. And something else that I would say was a surprise in the past, I would say 2 years, was like out of home coming back. But the way that out of home is coming back, it's a little bit more tech oriented, I would say now. So it's not just, hey, I'm going to put a billboard in New York City and that's it. But now the out of home stuff is getting a little bit more sophisticated, probably because a lot of us coming from a digital background were like, yes, this is great, but I want to be able to measure, something, some like foot traffic, like sales lift, whatever that need to be. And then third, I'd say the streaming portion. Streaming for me, before like we ever did any type of streaming campaign in the past, was like, oh, this must be complicated. This must be too expensive. But then nowadays, there are certain platforms that allow you to buy streaming TV and also like linear TV at an affordable price, first of all, and then run 1, 2, 3 month test very easy. And basically, a media buyer could easily, I'd say, adjust his skill set to become like a media buyer to buy streaming TV, I'd say, in the near future.
I have a curiosity question I have to ask you, and I cannot let the day pass, and I didn't send it to you in the script. And that is the word artificial intelligence. A generation like yours, arguably the generation that will be the largest part of the shopper wallet in the next 5 years, when you hear the word artificial intelligence, what comes to mind? Because I think it's such a misused word in our industry, and most people are still trying to understand what to do with it, but we've over glamorized it. Would you agree?
I would agree, but it's something that it's very fascinating and exciting. It's something a little bit unknown, so totally new. And I'm the type of person that I really like when something is new and it's a hot topic. I always jump in, so I'm guilty of that. But I do think there's opportunities there, especially when you want to move faster, when you want to get certain task, repeated task to get them accomplished in a better way. Maybe you don't need extra headcount. Maybe there's way to facilitate certain tasks. I would say AI is really useful, but again, right now I agree with you. It's a little bit all over the place. So some stuff is not useful at all. Some stuff is just out there, and I'd say it's fun to play with, but I don't see much use or way to leverage that in the day to day.
I couldn't agree more, right? Thanks for kind of putting it out there. But what a wild, wacky 4 years for retail media, right? The large brands have kind of bought out the weapons with the full budgets thrown against retail media. But Kettle and Fire, right? How did you navigate fighting with those super oversized budgets?
Yeah, so we've been like one of the first brand on investing like on platform like Instacart, especially in our category, I'd say. And so definitely like in the past 12 months, we've seen bigger brand investing shit tons of money on on retail media. But I would say that when you are a smaller brand, you have the opportunity to move faster and be like beta tester and jump into opportunity much faster than those larger brands. So that's something that I really like when partners tell us, hey, do you guys want to try these new features that we just launched? Do you want to be part of this beta program? So that's way, in my opinion, that you can jump into some sort of blue ocean and still leverage the fact that you don't have as much red tape as those bigger brand has, right? And that's a big plus when you are like a smaller player. On top of that, big bigger brands, they just go for the mass audience. I would say they are not very targeted. That's what I'm seeing. So it's going to be definitely like more competitive, the retail media space. But if you think about even keyword, very much is going to be competitive on certain keyword and certain like category or certain audience. So if you're a smaller brand, you could also start to think about new type of audience. So maybe you're always targeting like you potentially in the past, maybe your type of consumer were always like female, I don't know, 40 plus, but potentially now you can look into sport, into athlete. That's just an example. So jumping into different categories where your competition or like those bigger brands are not playing, it's a interesting advantage that you have as a smaller brand. And moreover than that, depends who you are competing with, but leveraging, I would say, strong partnership with influencer or creators. I don't think bigger brand have this opportunity. Yes, of course, they can leverage celebrity, but if you're a commodity type of brand not doing anything cool, I doubt that some smaller, influencer or mid-sized creator is going to be excited about your product.
Well said. I do personally believe that the world has now moved to a very short attention span. I won't even call it 30 seconds. I'd say 5 to 6 seconds. You have to captivate the audience in the 5, 6 second formula. And the best way to do it is the digital economy or digital creators. That's where the future of advertising lies. So how are you investing your media dollars today? Are you leaning on certain platforms, and are all platforms created equal? For example, you referred Instacart being important for you. I'd just love to learn.
Yes, so it depends, I would say, on the distribution level that you have. Because definitely like Instacart or DoorDash, for example, they play a large role from like a media standpoint and a media allocation. And that's because they cover multiple retailers. So you have the advantage there that you're going to spend X $1,000 there and you're going to be covered across your retail or distribution, except of course like Whole Food. But some other platforms, for example, have like different advantages, I would say, than others. There's platform like Walmart that is a little bit more robust, I would say, than Instacart, for example, on certain area. So you can leverage Walmart in a different way than you're leveraging like Instacart. Meanwhile, some other platforms are still like a little bit new and new to the space. So there's not much that you can do there. So I would say, and the reason why it depends on distribution is like, of course, distribution is never equal, but if you are trying to push certain retailers, so let's suppose you're trying to push more Walmart, then you're going to invest the majority of your media dollar toward like Walmart instead of Instacart, for example, because maybe Walmart is your only retailer, so it doesn't make sense to overinvest on Instacart. And then I would say a mix of online media and online, given the importance of retailers and the target audience. So, of course, overinvesting online to reach like a certain digital penetration that maybe you aim to hit, but also start to invest in offline media to get closer to the consumer journey, to the purchase journey of the consumer, I'd say. And I want to add also, it depends on the goal. Like if you want to move product or you want to move more like, get user to try your product. If you need to be very efficient, like you want to maybe overinvest in certain platform rather than others, and potentially could be like platform like Ibarra with coupon, etc. But overall, like from a 360 standpoint and omnichannel, I really try to go with a full funnel approach as much as possible, where possible. From like online streaming advertisement to billboard to in-store, for example, IRC or Box Talker. So try to measure, of course, everything because I come from like a digital DTC background, given that I'm, part of the DTC community as a background. But it's important that if you have enough budget, try to, of course, start with like a full funnel approach.
So how do you actually work on your media budget, right? Do you actually optimize every campaign? Do you set it and forget it and then worry about it 6 months later? Are you optimizing monthly? Like, how does that ecosystem of looking at the numbers and continuously making it better work for you?
Yeah, so never, I would say, set and forget it. That's not an option. But of course, there are certain platforms where maybe you invest a couple of $1,000s a month, right? Just because you have good like return on ad spend there is enough volume. So those platforms are less demanding than other platforms where maybe you are investing 6 figures a month. So trying to optimize, of course, weekly or daily for certain platforms, and depends on the complexity of the platform itself. Because like I said, all of those platforms are so different, and there's so many new platforms all the time with new features that it's really important to be there. But of course, we try to go with the one where we spend the most money. So be more like active on those platforms and then go down based on the size of all the other platforms. But long story short, yes, trying to optimize weekly or daily where possible, try to reach certain KPIs.
Awesome, Nico. Thank you for that. So let's jump into measurement. So obviously, you invest, but you have to measure, and we are living in a world where there are limited to no standards for retail media in terms of uniformity across media networks, and they don't really correspond back to old school digital advertising like Yahoo, Google either. Like to me, measuring the success of a campaign in RMN based on CPM is silly compared to maybe on Google. That's important because it's such a mature old platform at this point. So what metrics do you look for in a world where there's limited standardization?
It's a good question, and it's a kind of a fun ecosystem nowadays. Definitely like CPM. I was just talking about CPM today with a colleague, and that's not like a measure of of success. But like in the majority of those retail media platform, I like to look at into different measurement. One is of course ROAS standard, but that's based on the platform itself, their attribution model. So it's tough to compare like platforms based on their return on ad spend. So that's just a baseline in order to understand if we are profitable within that platform specifically. And then I started to use an interesting metric that I was thinking about, which is like dollar per unit move. So how much does it cost me to move one unit within that platform, regardless if it's like attributed unit or organic unit. So that platform, like I invest 100K, how many units did I move in that platform for 100K? So that allows me to kind of compare a little bit more performances between platforms. So it's a very interesting metric. Also because you can also try to understand what's like the same metric, but in store. Again, of course, in store is going to be always more efficient. It's totally different. But when you run a promo in store, it's useful to understand, okay, I spend this amount of money. How many units did they move within that month by investing so much money into a promo? And then I also look at like new to brand, of course. Some platforms like report and share new to brand. So we try to keep a pretty high percentage of new to brand because otherwise we're going to keep just reaching the same people over and over again. And then another metric, and I'd say other two metrics that are pretty interesting and important for me is one is digital penetration, because some retailers, some brokers, some buyers, of course, they want you to maintain a certain digital penetration over time compared with like benchmarks or other competitors. So you want to make sure that you hit that threshold. And then the marketing efficiency ratio. So in total revenue divided by spend, how much what's my marketing efficiency ratio of that platform. So again, it's interesting, a lot of metrics, trying to play around with all of them to compare platforms based on goals.
So Nico, yeah, I my pet peeve on ROAS always has been it's fully manipulatable. Like the example you gave of just stretch it by 2 weeks and you'll see different results. Industry's kind of gone crazy if you ask me with that one. So I don't personally use ROAS as a metric other than a high level check in anymore for anything. And also in every platform, ROAS is going to vary differently depending on the audience size and type. So it's crazy people still use that. So let me remind the audience I'm speaking to Nico Gloazzo, Senior Director of Omnichannel and Retail Media at Kettle Fire. So Nico, the first half of this discussion, we talked quite a bit about retail media, digital advertising, media, how you compete with the big brands with a lot of budgets. But one of the areas I'm very curious about is how are you and the people you work with, the teams that you work with cross-functionally, staying abreast of trends and changes in this space? What's the importance of conferences in this? And then do you read a lot? Are you listening to podcasts? Like, how do you stay abreast? Because this world is changing every day.
Yeah, it's changing a lot, I would say. Too fast from like one point of view, because every time you kind of get used to a platform or like something is getting a new one, but that's also exciting. So, but conference, yes, I try to go to more conferences if I can. But I'm based in Europe, so maybe I go to the States, I'd say 2-3 times a year. But conference is definitely one way, especially because you can meet with different people all together in the same spot. So it's much easier to kind of connect and gain some insight. On top of that, I'm a big fan of one-on-ones, which means that I try to, if I have a questions about, for example, I have a question about Kroger, or I have a question about Walmart, or something specific, I just go straight to someone that's maybe working for a company bigger than Kettle Fire that has like a VP role and maybe already saw this in the past. And I just ask, hey, are you down for like 1 hour or mind sharing or like paid consultancy? Not a big deal. And that's something for me that is like the best way to gain insight, feedback in 1 hour to your question, because of course save you a bunch of time, and also like it's much easier to navigate the system when someone already kind of saw this in the past or did this in the past. At the same time, I have to say that a lot of the retail media ecosystem and features are so new now that I've often found that like not many people out there kind of try something new or kind of have I'm not saying a silver bullet, but it's totally different than when I was asking for like recommendation on Facebook, right? Because Facebook is such an old platform. Of course, everyone is kind of sharing insight and trying a lot of stuff, but on the retail media side, is like it's totally new for everyone. So it's really tough to say and find someone that has like 3 years experience and already did maybe something around there.
It's perhaps fortuitous that we actually met up at a conference. So we now know the importance of conferences. What about other learning platforms? Like you talked a lot about learning from other people, but do you read up a lot, or where does that come from?
I try to stay up to date as much as possible, especially like I try to join even if they might be standard thing, but I try to, of course, join all the webinars when certain platforms send out webinar, like, Walmart Connect, the latest webinar, your podcast. And again, not because I'm here on the podcast, but also because you interview so many people from within the retail media ecosystem.
Man, I tried for 5 minutes to get him to say that, and he did it on his own. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Now we can go to the next question. No problem.
No, but it's true. Like with with your podcast, because you interview so many different people, as well as like people that work, for example, for Walmart or Kroger, or maybe work, on those platforms in the past. It's really helpful to get a sense about where the industry is going or what's new out there. So, especially on the retail media ecosystem, I think your podcast is probably number one there.
We're legends in our own minds, Nico. So let's jump to coupon craziness. Because of inflation, brands have resisted working on pricing. And so a lot of money is going into couponing, and all the digital couponing providers are having a field day. Unsustainable to me. It's teaching the consumer very wrong behavior, but that's coming at the expense of a budget on retail media that's come to a standstill. Maybe, Nico, for a smaller brand like you, that's fabulous. Because when you see the big brands stalling, this is your chance to conquest and do bigger things. What's your advice on retail media budgets go forward in this couponing ecosystem?
So yes, I agree with you about the coupon like situation. It's a little bit getting out of hands right now, and at the same time, I think that if a coupon is like leveraging the right way, which means like similar to what was happening sometime on the DTC side, where you can target like specific customers or specific user based on specific like during specific moments or in specific situation. For example, someone is not buying your product from a long time, so maybe you want to get him, to come back and buy your product, or someone is buying only competitors' product, so you want him to kind of try your product. So that's like a good use of the coupon in that case. It's a small incentive to make the customer buy that. But in the long term, I definitely think that that's not sustainable, especially if you combine that with advertisement. So, for example, there's certain platform where you can, and we did this, of course, as well, but we noticed that was not sustainable. So if, for example, you go into a grocery store, you buy a product, take a picture of the receipt, send it back in order to get like maybe 50% off or 100% off in the sense of like a rebate. That's probably fine if you're launching a new product in a given location, if you need to move units. But part of me wonder what type of audience is that one? Are those like just a type of audience trying to find deals? And second, it's like very expensive because it costs money to kind of give the product away plus the advertisement. So I don't feel like it's sustainable in the long term.
Well said, Niccolo. I couldn't agree more with you, right? I don't think it's a sustainable universe at all whatsoever when you're trying to buy down price just by throwing coupons, and that's when you're getting your boost of volume. You're hurting baseline volume, moving away from loyalty, and teaching the consumer to only buy at a reduced price every single time. The most healthiest brands actually have good baseline pricing that results in baseline volume, and then use display, feature, online mechanisms of price discounting for like 20-25% of their business. And it's going to vary by category, but still baseline volume should be the anchor. But tell me about this. If budgets are shifting into couponing, they're obviously coming away from retail media. In the last 6 months, does that mean for a smaller brand like you, it's actually been easier to compete on retail media dollars, or not really?
It depends on the platform, but no, not really. Like retail media, I've noticed that it's getting a little bit more expensive. Like I can see that just from a cost per click standpoint, right? And when it's getting more expensive, it's getting a little bit more competitive. So I feel like that even if bigger brand maybe are gonna go, heavy on discount, it feels like they have tons of budget either way to keep like spending on retail media, and at the same time add on top of that like coupon. But I've seen also like some smaller brands that they were like going very heavy on discount, but that was not sustainable. They last probably a year and then they lost distribution because like sales velocity is important, of course, but you need to maintain sales velocity over time. And if you maintain sales velocity with coupon and discount, that's going to end very soon.
Nice, Nico. So let's move to the next item out here, which is the pieces of retail media. There's so many pieces now: search, offsite, onsite, man ad, social. What is considered a good investment? A mix of all, or focusing heavily? This is a debate you and I had in Barcelona. Like, is search everything, or should you actually vanilla spread and optimize every single piece, or optimize up top?
I would start always for okay, maybe let's start by saying that of course depends from like the goal of each brand, right? But let's suppose that your goal is to move units and your goal is to have like a healthy like return on your spend, and you want to be cash positive. So definitely like start like bottom of the funnel is the way in every platform, in my opinion. You start there, you try to maximize opportunity there, and when you see that opportunities are maxed out, which means like maybe your ROAS start to decline, the cost when to move one unit start to kind of get a little bit higher. So that's the moment, in my opinion, where you can start to go a little bit upper funnel, which means like, for example, on Instacart, you can start to invest in shoppable advertisement, still maybe search focus and not behavioral just yet, but still like a little bit more middle of the funnel, and then go up. Offsite, however, I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of offsite display, specifically advertisement, because like I feel like you said, the attention span right now is so limited, and display banner offline, I don't know. I doubt that they're gonna do anything.
Nico, for our audience, let's just quantify what that means. So I think what you and I are referring to is, if you're a product brand, food brand, that would be a banner ad on Facebook offline to bring over into the retail ecosystem. Not a big fan, correct?
Correct.
Or even Google, for that matter.
Correct. Or even like, yes, or even if you're leveraging Trade Desk or any other platform that does like display advertisement. For example, Trade Desk is a partner for Walmart advertisement offline. I'm not a big fan of doing like those banner ads on like a blog, for example, or like on a news site that, a recipe site that the user is browsing and then see a display banner. I think there's too much space out there and it's tough to get customer attention. But if you do video advertisement, I think it's a little bit more interesting because, of course, like video, you can have a higher engagement with the potential customer. You can show more, and you have the same targeting, but at least I'd say the power of the video, even if the attention span is pretty low right now, it's much higher than a simple display. It's going to cost a little bit more, however, on the other side. And I want to also add, outside of that, something that I think could be, and is also interesting in my opinion, is like leveraging paid social, or for example, like amplify an influencer advertisement, an influencer post through paid social, but then you can redirect the user to like Instacart, for example, by leveraging their landing page with attribution via their URL feature, via their UTM feature. And again, I don't expect in that moment, for example, to have incredibly, high return. But at the same time, let's suppose that you are leveraging this to amplify your message. You don't have like a DTC, for example, a DTC site because maybe you are a frozen brand. Then at that point, you can leverage the message that the influencers share on their Instagram and push the traffic to Instacart to make the final purchase. And you can track that performance. Again, don't expect super high performance, but at least it's something better than saying, hey, they generated 1 million views. I have no idea how that go.
Yep, well said indeed. But what about optimization? Do you believe it needs to be done individually for each piece, or is it just one master optimization for the full budget?
No, I like to look at the budget from like a 360 standpoint, in the sense of starting, of course, from the retailer that need more support, and then breaking down the budget based on the platform and the opportunity. But the optimization itself needs to be done, in my opinion, in every single platform. So you need to be there and try to optimize, understand if there's new features coming up, ask your rep or whoever, hey, is something new? Is there a new opportunity that we can leverage to kind of to test it out, to test and learn? So I'm a big fan of test and learn culture in general, but optimization needs to happen in every single platform.
Are you doing that for Kettle Fire? Like, are you getting into test and learn a lot?
Oh, yeah. And I'm always like, with any type of rep, I'm always like, hey, is there something new that we can do? Or if I see something where, for example, funny enough, but I recently saw that someone leveraged like Instacart on YouTube to do something. Like they leverage like the Instacart audience, I think, to YouTube, to do shoppable YouTube. And I emailed straight away my rep saying, hey, why are we not those brands? Like, my goal is to be those brands, like to be there, to be the first one to be there. So next time, let me know. So long story short, I always try to ping the rep or the account manager to say, I want to be the first one that know about something.
Yeah, so sounds like you want to stay on the cutting edge of advertising, especially in this space, and that you're not only challenging the industry, but you're challenging individual ad platforms as well. And then what about your colleagues when you try to bring these cutting edge ideas for testing? Do you usually find cross-functionally there's acceptance, and are you able to bring them on easily, or do you find yourself explaining a lot to the industry and people around you?
So it's interesting because, yes, to be honest, there's not many people that. So it depends, I would say. Let me step back. It depends because there's a lot of learning opportunities right now on the retail media ecosystem. And I also noticed that some brands, especially the one that are just launching retail, or also legacy brand that maybe they were in retail and then they just found themselves, hey, I need to launch Instacart. Hey, I need to launch, Walmart ads. I have no idea where to start. I think there is like a gap there and a lot of like white space. So I find myself often, in the past, I did some consultancy for brand. And then recently I also launched as a side project, like a retail media agency called QBR. And I found myself like in this situation where like, I had to explain to brand and give support around the retail media ecosystem, as well as maybe my colleagues sometime, but also myself 2 years ago, I was just trying to figure it out. So going from person to person, going to the account rep to try to understand what's going on. But I feel like that people that have like a digital background have some sort of advantage there, just because they can, all the learnings that they got in the past years on the DTC side can be easily adjusted for the retail media ecosystem. But those people maybe lack on knowledge on the retail itself, on the importance of the retail, what they want, simple concept around digital penetration, why it's important to keep it, why maybe you don't want to look at ROAS at that point because it's not as important. So there is this gap, I feel like nowadays, that it's an interesting, time to be here. And so to watch out for potential future trends, I'd say.
On that very topic of interesting time to be here, future trends, let's go to the last question on this episode, which is that very question on future trends, right? The last question we always ask is what's next? What trends are you following and coaching the industry on? What adoption curve outside of AI are we at the cutting edge of?
Yeah, so online to offline, it's definitely like one of those trends, and I'm guilty of that because now offline looks like became a little bit trendy again. If you think about, like I was saying at the beginning about out of home, so it's definitely something that I'd say catch your eyes. But because it's getting a little bit more, in my opinion, tech oriented or more measurable, it's more interesting to leverage those type of tactics nowadays. More than that, what I really liked and that I tested in the past as well is like digital signage advertisement. For example, Whole Food launched this like I think already last year, digital signage in store and in the aisle as well. But you manage those advertisements from like Amazon sellers, from like Amazon advertisement platform. So basically you are advertising through Amazon, but in store featuring like those display advertisement or a short video in a specific aisle. And that's very interesting. I think that's gonna happen more and more. Also, Instacart, for example, they launched their cart where you can do advertisement on the cart itself when you are inside a grocery. Hopefully, something that we're gonna try very soon. But I think that's how the market is evolving. On top of that, API expansion, I'd say between retail and advertisement platforms. So if any those last mile delivery platforms or those retailer can, expand their API and connect it to Shopify or to DTC brands or to Amazon as well. I think that's an interesting area there. Platform like Trade Desk already doing that by sharing audience with Instacart or vice versa. And then last but not least, I would say attribution. So if someone can unlock attribution across multiple stores and multiple platforms would be, I think, very, very interesting and definitely like I'll be one of the client. Again, because we tried like geo-targeted campaign, but yeah, didn't really work as much. So definitely like connecting offline data with online across the retailer and across platform, I think it's one of the trend that we're going to see in the upcoming years, hopefully.
To me, multi-touch attribution has been around forever, but nobody's actually figured it out into a meaningful way, given how digital advertising has spread with so many platforms. Like no one's taken on the brave world of retail media within that multi-touch attribution in any significant way. At least I haven't seen any. To our audience, if you've heard of somebody, let us know. Let Nico and me know. We'd love to hear. But you are 100% right. I think the one that figures out the multi-touch attribution on that side, it'll be a major, major, major win for the industry as well as for them. No debate in my head. So Nico, thank you for taking us through what you're following right there. Let me remind our audience that you can find all of our content simply by going to a web browser and typing cpgguys.com as the URL. And if you think you or your company has some thought leadership to contribute to a community discussion, just like Nico did, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Again, that's contact@cpgguys.com. Maybe you can join us on the podcast. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com in the navigation bar up top. That's because the rating tells us how we're doing. The review tells us whether we're bringing the right guests and having the right conversation. For our 33,000 plus followers on LinkedIn, we are grateful. Without you and the clicks, the likes, the comments, the direct messages, the meetups at conferences, the show wouldn't exist. 400 plus episodes in, we're deeply thankful that you chose to listen to us and the CPG guys. Nico, thanks for making time on a Friday afternoon to chat with me.
Hey, it was a pleasure. So great to be here. Thank you.
I'm glad we chatted months ago and we made it happen 3 months later. So that's a wrap of this episode. We will see you soon on another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.